Hi, everyone. I'm Tasha Sims,
And I'm Marc Caron.
and you're listening to, well, Facebook Live, but also Wednesday nights, 6 to 7 p.m., Conscious Living Radio on Co-op Radio. We also have a YouTube channel, lots to check out, and www.consciousliving.radio.org is where everything's available as a podcast. I'm excited about today's show. Peter Tung is our guest. He's been engaged in counseling individuals and groups for many years, helping people resolve difficulties, awaken to their spiritual path. He's hosted a weekly radio program called Awakening to Conscious Co-Creation on the Seventh Wave Network of America, interviewing many experts with a view to exploring higher consciousness. He's also led visualization meditations for over 25 years. And versed in many modalities, his discovery of Richard Rudd's work, a system called the Gene Keys, based upon the Chinese I Ching, led him to work with individuals as well as group workshops using the Gene Keys. So today we're exploring this fascinating system that bridges the 64 hexagrams of the oracle with, are you ready? The 64 codons that make up our DNA. I just thought that was so exciting when I saw that. So welcome to the show, Peter.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. Thank you, Tasha. Lovely introduction. Thank you.
So before we dive into the specifics, and I'm really big on how, I love the details of how. Before we get into the gene keys and applying its practical wisdom, how we do that, let's just start with a recap of what led you to the gene keys, why it was so attractive to you.
Okay, well, the attraction was immediate when I actually interviewed Richard Rudd myself, just like you're doing with me now,
Right.
on my radio show. And he's English and I'm English, and so we just got on really well. And so, but I'll come back to how that developed I'll just tell you a bit more about my background first, and I'll come back to that. So I was a regular beer drinking, chemistry teaching guy in England, except that my mother was an astrologer. So she was always chipping away at me to get me to pay attention. And then the big breakthrough for me came when I brought a rugby tour, my rugby team from my school in England to Canada, West Coast, Calgary, right through to the coast. And as a result of that, I got recruited back to come back to St. Michael's University School in Victoria, where I became the head of boarding and looked after the boarding students, still coached rugby, still taught chemistry. But because I was on campus, I got to know the kids at a different level. And eventually I became the senior school principal, so responsible for the kids grade 9 through grade 12. And then what happened was the so-called indigo children started to come and to tell me what they knew beyond the norm. And so I started collecting this wonderful understanding of what it was like to be them. And our school system doesn't work for them at all. So I made the crazy decision of leaving the best job in the world to, I thought, open schools for these kids. And that's never happened, and it still hasn't happened, and it's still vibrating in the ethers, but it hasn't grounded. It's really fascinating. This is a long time ago. I came to Canada in 1985, and I left the school in 2005. And so then when that didn't happen, I turned to Spirit and said, what is it you're wanting me to do, having given up this best job, and then the schools have not manifested? And I got taken on this alternative journey of looking into the process of death and dying and helping people make the transition. And then I got involved in true alchemy at the actual physical furnace with the boiling metals and minerals. And I would never advise anybody to do it. It's the most dangerous thing you can do. But I learned through that process, when the metals and minerals alchemize, transform, then exactly the same process is available to us. So I then started studying alchemy and got to realize that if you aren't transforming yourself internally, then you can't be responsible to help others do the same. So I had to go on my own internal journey to bring this through. And so then what happened was I got this radio show, and I did 5 years, 250 shows. So again, I was building up this knowledge background base. But again, I realized after a while that my mind was getting flooded with information, and that wasn't it. And so Richard Rudd was one of the last interviews that I did. And after the show, he really enjoyed the time we had together. So he gifted me the Gene Key book, The Golden Path, which is the journey through the process. And obviously I got my free profile, and Marc's got the book right there. So I did that because he was coming to Vancouver to do a workshop and 2 workshops in the States. So he came to Vancouver the week after I interviewed him. And by then I'm thinking, wow, this is really significant. And I have a meditation group, and I told them on the following Monday, this is really important. Pay attention to this. So he comes to Vancouver on the Wednesday following the Wednesday I interviewed him, and he did his workshop in Vancouver. On the Thursday morning, he went to Vancouver Airport to go down to Portland, and the American border guards wouldn't let him into the country. The best decision they ever made. They turned him back. So he went back to his hotel room in Vancouver, and then he did his 2-day workshop in Portland remotely. He cancelled his Bay Area workshop, and he sent me an email and said, I've had a bit of a drama. Can I come over? So the next thing I know, I'm meeting him off the ferry in Victoria from Vancouver. I've never met him, and we didn't know each other. And he'd actually turned down the opportunity to teach at Hollyhock in the following year. And then after he came through the Gulf Islands on the ferry, met me. He then came to my meditation group literally 1 week after I'd talked about him. And there he was. So we manifested him within a week. And it just went on from there. And I then got invited to go to Romania with his team to be part of the Venus sequence teachings. And after that, he said to me, I really want you to go back to Canada and become my main facilitator of the Gene Keys in Canada. And this was in 2015. And I just made this absolute, definite, committed decision that this would become the main focus in my life and my work, because it was so profound. Mm-hmm. So since that time, I've led workshops, and I've done one-on-one counseling throughout that time, and right up till this morning. Did 2 sessions this morning. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, we better dive into what it is so that everyone knows what we're talking about. I mean, the I Ching many people know as an oracle, but I think it's lesser known that the mathematics inside the I Ching is a code, and it somehow relates to our DNA. So say more about that.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you what happened with Richard. So he has had 2 experiences where he was in an altered state for 3 days on both occasions. And the second time, he locked himself away in his study, and it was a 3-day, completely altered state of experience, didn't have any sleep, didn't eat, and he had this transmission come through him. And the transmission was being shown how creation condensed into the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. So the I Ching is the actual structure of life, and how life comes together, coalesces into form. And he was also shown how those 64 hexagrams coincided precisely with the 64 codons in our DNA. In other words, all of life exists within us. Creation exists within us. But because of all the challenges of our lives and our parents' lives and our genetics, it's all blocked and locked up. So the Gene Key process is about an unraveling of all of the blockages that exist that prevent us from stepping into our true divine nature and our higher consciousness, and if you want to call it, enlightenment. Mm-hmm. So what Richard did then was he spent 7 years bringing this information out in a form that we would be able to work with and create this wonderful future process called the Gene Keys.
Which is literally a map. We're going to get into how that is. But I'm also really curious because in our DNA also holds not only our past, but the entire past of humanity. Right?
Exactly. All of creation. Absolutely.
It's mind-blowing. I mean, that's mind-blowing how deeply interconnected and important it is to recognize that
Absolutely.
piece, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So we have a higher purpose that somehow I think you call genius, our genius, which is our purpose, hidden in our DNA. And it's unlocked through, I know you offer an initial free profile, which is what I first saw when I went on the website. And I went, oh, this looks like fun. Let's describe it, and also tell our listeners that everybody who's listening can get their own free profile. Tell us how, when you get this profile, how it is unlocking your genius.
Yeah, that's the key question. So you just go to the jinkeys.com website, and there's a link to free profile, and you just need to know your date of birth, time, and location, and you plug that information in, and then you get a 3-page summary, including the final page, which is 11 spheres, which contain 2 numbers, a number before the decimal point and a number after the decimal point. And those 11 spheres contain 3 levels of frequency. There's the shadow frequency, the gift frequency, and the what's so-called Siddhi frequency. And so what we are doing in this process is recognizing the shadow frequency that we are carrying within us. And that shadow frequency are all the conditioned programs that were inserted into us by the life that we've been leading from the moment of our birth, our genetics. And as a result of that, we have these repetitive programs that we live by, some of which we don't even know exist, but they're controlling the way in which we operate in our lives. So what we're doing is really diving into that shadow frequency to see how we can transmute and transform that into the gift. Mm-hmm. The gift frequency then is a higher frequency through these codes that we are now living in. And when we're living in the gifts, we are moving into this place of contentment and happiness in our lives, and recognizing those shadows that still keep popping up that we now still need to clear. It's an ongoing process. Mm-hmm. But when we're living now, if we're fundamentally living in our gifts most of the time, then we're living this life of contentment. Right. And then if we're really lucky, then these Siddhic frequencies start to descend upon us. And you can't really seek the Siddhis, they come to you. And so you'll suddenly have this glimpse of bliss or peace or joy or ecstasy. Mm-hmm. And the worst thing you can do is to think about it or try and work it out. As soon as you do that, it goes away.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things I can say today is the mind cannot solve life. It's a mystery. It's supposed to be a mystery. And we want to surrender in awe and wonder to the mystery. And then you can explore this beautiful transmission in a more and more significant way. Because as you dive into it more and more, it expands. And so it's an ongoing journey mm-hmm. into the infinite, if you want to call mm-hmm. it that. Mm-hmm. So those 11 spheres are made up of 3 different sequences. So the 4 outer spheres are called the activation sequence. This is where you begin the journey to look deeply into you and what you're actually here to be in the world, out in the world of work. And that is called your life's work. The evolution is what you need to do to evolve. It's what keeps us stuck in those lower frequencies. And then the other 2 in the activation sequence, the radiance and purpose, are the inner you. So if you go down to the bottom, the purpose is what your soul wants for you in this lifetime. And the life's work at the top is how you're going to bring that out into the world. So what we want to do is to align our purpose with our life's work. And that's what starts leading us to our contentment. And then after that, you move into the Venus sequence, which is where you look into your primary one-on-one relationships in the world to see what those people in your life are here to show you. Some of those people we have wonderful interactions with, and others are a challenge. And we look into all of those to see what it is that we need to see about ourselves. Excuse me. And then you go into your childhood, the first 21 years of life, where we are developing through our physical incarnation in the first 7 years, then the development of our emotional body in the next 7 years, and the development of our mental body in the next 7 years. So now we're looking into what happened in our lives during these first 21 years. And if you had good parenting and a good life, then you can emerge as a 21-year-old as a fully realized mature adult. But in the majority of people, that isn't the case because they've got stuck at some point previous to that as a result of what's happened in their lives. So people arrest their development. So they may appear to be an adult out in the world, but really they're still acting as a child. And we see that all the time in different aspects. I won't talk about people particularly, but you know what I mean, where people are behaving in a very immature way, although they appear to have achieved a lot in the world. because we're getting down to the nitty-gritty of who they truly are. It can't be hidden from them. And that takes us all the way back to the moment of our conception. And in the moment of our conception, we had imprinted into us the sacred wound of our ancestors. So we made this crazy decision to incarnate into this life and clear the wounds of our ancestors. And the final step in the Venus sequence is that gene key and that line. And it tells you exactly what you need to work on to clear out your ancestral wounding. It's the greatest gift you can offer your ancestors. Mm. And then from there, that particular gene key twists out of the core wound, the deepest, darkest shadow, into the greatest gift that you have. And now you step into the Pearl sequence, which is how you bring all of this learning back out into the world in the way in which you offer yourself in service in the world once you have cleared that wound. And that leads you into your final step, which is the Pearl itself in the Pearl sequence. And now you're flowing through life with ease and grace. You're still dealing with stuff, but you're doing it from this slightly detached, higher awareness. I guess the right word is equanimity, that you're seeing things from this slightly distanced perspective, and you're still doing your work, and you're opening your heart to love, and you're embracing people with this new level of transmission inside yourself that you're emanating out in the world.
So you've just described the golden journey, I'm assuming, right?
Yes,
that's
absolutely.
What that was. You went way, I have so many questions, but they're way back at the beginning. So I'm going to go back and keep going.
Session, Tasha.
I'm rewind. I'm back at the profile.
As you were sharing, Peter, I was going through my stuff, trying to connect all the dots, going, oh, I got work to do.
So just one thing I haven't mentioned, I do need to add, the number before the decimal point in the profile is the actual gene key. And so Richard's written this wonderful book where he writes about all 64 keys in the shadow, the gift, and the Siddhi. And he is a poet. So the language is absolutely beautiful in the book.
And so that's where you'd get the interpretation for your free profile, right, exactly, because it's not completely clear the way I printed it out. Okay.
And you've got to be careful with words, because there's one word to describe something and you may misinterpret what that word means. Right. And then let me just finish this one point. Then after the decimal point, there's another number, which is only a number from 1 to 6. And those numbers correspond to the line of the hexagram that you're functioning on in that gene key. So they have their own unique flavor. And they correspond to the 6 lines in the hexagram. And they also connect into the chakra system. So the 6th line are the 2 chakras in the head, the 5th line in the throat, 4th line heart, 3rd line solar plexus, 2nd line sacral, 1st line base.
I love how intricate it is. I think it's fascinating. And the question I had before I get back into the profiles, does all this personal work literally impact our DNA? And are we able to reprogram ourselves?
Absolutely. So the way that works is you begin, it's almost like taking a journey back through your childhood. So you begin by getting a mental understanding of what that gene key is saying. So we get that mental level of understanding. And then because you're tuning into that, stuff starts happening in your life where it triggers your emotional body. Mm-hmm. So then you pay attention to those triggers to see what was it that person said or did, or what circumstance was I in that got me to react. So then it gets into the emotional body. And then when you dive into that, it takes you back into the physical, and there is an actual change in the DNA, and you'll never repeat that pattern again. Mm-hmm. So yes, this is about the transformation of DNA, and this is the great work of Bruce Lipton, right, in recognizing that you can change your physical DNA through higher consciousness.
And it's important to do more than just contemplate, right? When we're doing this kind of inner child work, we're being asked to somatically embody what's coming up in that moment. True?
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. I have great difficulty when it's separate from that, and people think that, they're talking about it, they're thinking, they're reading, but they're not actually deeply in connection with that wounded aspect that needs to be grown up in the case of the inner child. Right.
So the 2 key words in all of this are embodiment and integration. Mm-hmm. Exactly what you said, taking it deeply within and bringing it all home into oneness. And again, there are, too many spiritual people see their day-to-day material life and their spiritual life as two different things.
Right.
And we need to integrate them together.
So how come your birthday, like what is it, the relationship with astrology here? Because it's your birthday and your time, which some people might not even have. How is that? Maybe I'll ask it this way, because I know you'll bring astrology into it. Is it our own soul that's creating this purpose and designing this path? How does that work, and how is it connected with astrology?
Right. Yeah. Great question. So the way to look at it is this, that in the moment of our birth, all the planets and the stars are in a certain position. And it doesn't matter when you were due to be born, but when you pop out in that moment, all the stars and the planets are in a fixed position in that moment. And they're all there to help you fulfill your divine destiny. So your soul has chosen that moment. And so what the gene key profile do is it picks out where certain planets were in which gene keys. So every year, every gene key gets illuminated by the sun just once for 5 days. So today, for example, we've just moved into the 12th gene key. So anybody born today would have the 12th gene key as their life's work. Then the other 3 gene keys in the outer circle are connected through 6-month, 3-month, and 9-month gaps. In astrology, for example, the life's work and evolution will be considered to be in opposition, exactly opposite each other. And the same is true for the radiance and purpose. And then coming up into the Venus sequence, it's governed by where the moon was, where Mars and Venus were, and then in the Pearl sequence where Jupiter was.
And so does this mean, because I know somewhere I read in some of your writing that the genius is meant to be explored and worked with in a group, not just individually. So again, is your tribe or your people, are they the ones with the same purpose? Is that who
not necessarily, because it's complementary. But again, what I would say around that is, for some people, it's best to be done on their own, and for others, it's best to be done in a group. So when you look at the different lines, that will tell you the sort of group that you want to work with. So if you've got a predominant line 1, you want to do it on your own. If you're line 2, you want to work with one-on-one partnership. If you're line 3, you want to work with a smaller interactive group. And line 4 is more of a network. So it depends on which particular sphere we're talking about and what line you have, to be more specific, because it's different people like to do things in different ways, obviously.
I mean, these gene keys seem like a real marriage of Eastern oracle and Western science, like right brain, left brain. Is that how you see it?
In fact, Richard has said, in all humility, this was the first full synthesis of everything. So whichever angle you're coming from, it's in there, whether it's science, spirituality, normal day-to-day life, paganism, covers absolutely everything. And it does.
Let's enter, because you had said there are 3 levels to the journey: the shadow, the gift, the siddhi. I want to talk about the shadow, if we can get really specific with it. So the shadow, it lives in the unconscious, and it's a really, I think, important step that lots of people miss, again, in the New Age world. But that's where your gift is. You're not going to be transformed. That's what gets transformed into the gift. So I loved when I went, oh, we're on the same page. What is the most effective way to access buried shadow material?
Right. So again, through the gene keys, when you read that chapter in the book, in fact, I've just been reading the 12th gene key today, because it's starting today. And so that's what I do to keep myself topped up with information. So the shadow of the 12th gene key is vanity. Now, it doesn't matter what you think about him, but you'll never guess whose birthday it is today: Donald Trump. So Donald Trump carries the shadow of vanity. Now, whether you like him or not doesn't matter, but he shows vanity, right?
Yeah.
So when you look into vanity, you're now looking, what actually is vanity? Well, vanity is actually a very internal journey. And it's got a lot to do with self-aggrandizement. It's to do with self-identification, over-identification with your own ego.
Mm-hmm.
So the first step is you've got to be brutally honest with yourself. You can't spiritually bypass, which is what you were suggesting people do, and they do. You've got to look into yourself and say, okay, where does this play a role in my life? I have this gene key myself, so I know it, and I have to pay attention to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the shadows of the 12th gene key vanity is elitism. So I'm thinking, I'm not an elitist, I'm the opposite of an elitist. But then when I read it carefully, I realized one of the things that Richard says is this elitism can be to do with feeling a sense of superiority over someone else. And then I realized that I have no sense of that with normal, regular people. The only time I feel that is when there is someone who should know better and then they get it wrong. And that's my elitism. So you have to start really unraveling this depth of connection. And it can be quite subtle at times.
Right. So if you don't mind, maybe illuminate, when I did the profile, it said my deepest purpose in life is to manifest the gift of determination.
Yep.
And to realize that I need to transform the shadow of inertia. So that gave me pause, because inertia is not my normal state, although it has been for 4 months, because I had a concussion and a broken shoulder and couldn't do all the things that I always do. Good things, but nevertheless. So how would you work with that? That's like it's really interesting to me, but it's like you say, I sit there and I go, inertia, like,
So before we get into that, because of when I'm doing my sessions with people, I'm always listening very carefully to what they say. And what you just said was you had a concussion and you had an injury in your shoulder.
Yeah.
So immediately then I'm now looking at where you have your 6th line in your profile, because the concussion is to do with something in your head. And almost certainly when you got the concussion, you were not fully grounded in your body.
Oh, I was running.
Okay. But you were thinking about something else.
Yes. Hurry.
Right.
Get wired. Hurry. I was on set shooting a movie. Yeah.
So that's what happens. You literally go up and out of your body. You're not there. So you have an accident. So this is how it all ties together. So that would be my first piece. And then coming down to the inertia, which is the 9th gene key, what this is about, and your purpose then is to overcome this. This is what your soul wanted you to get in this lifetime. And the inertia is about being overwhelmed by the details. So it means that you are really good at the details, but you can get consumed by them, because your head is down working out all the details. So this is a very Sagittarius gene key. So when you look at the 9th gene key, what you're looking at is the centaur of Sagittarius. And so there's you sitting on the back of your white horse, firing the arrow of your heart's desire over the horizon. And then you use that ability with details to lead you to that destination. That's the 9th gene key solution to the inertia. So the inertia is looking down and going round in circles with all the details and losing sight of the bigger picture. So that's what stops you from moving forward, because it's like paralysis of analysis. And because of that, the mind has its own patterns that it's now got used to. So to get out of that pattern, you've got to show some determination to create some new rewiring in the brain. And as you mentioned the 9th gene key, I'll just mention this really interesting word, which is the Siddhi, which is invincibility, which seems a really odd word, and you'll enjoy this final outcome here, Tasha. Seems a strange word for a Siddhi, invincibility. What does that mean? And what it does mean...
Maybe define Siddhi for the folks, because that...
Sorry, yes. So Siddhi is the highest frequency that we can embody in this lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the highest frequency that we can actually take into our bodies. So the invincibility then would mean that because you're very good with the details, you go deeper and deeper into the details, and eventually you end up inside the atom. And then you go even deeper, and when you go in deeper into the atom, there is no matter. It's a toroidal energetic field, an in-breath and an out-breath, which we would now call free energy. In other words, there is always a residual energy left over. In other words, we are invincible. We will exist in the eternal now forever. And this is just a temporary body that we've put on to live this life on the physical plane. And we must not in any way diminish the significance of our physical bodies, because this is our physical body that's giving us the opportunity to have this life.
And how does that quite tie in with one's life work?
So at the very top of your profile, you must have the 5955.
I didn't get, when I printed it out, there was only 2 numbers. So 59 was the gene key for life's work.
That's right.
Yeah.
So your life's work is the 59th gene key, the shadow of which is dishonesty. So it means that in your life, you have had examples of dishonesty showing up in your life where people have had hidden agendas and you haven't known about it.
So much. I was just talking about it yesterday. It was like, whack, what? So much.
Okay. So then what you can do is get consumed in the details in the 9th gene key and lose sight of the dishonesty in the 59th gene key. So now what you're wanting to do is to look at the bigger picture, the bigger vision, to say, I need in my life absolute total transparency and intimacy, which are the gift and siddhi of the 59. And I'm going to create the necessary structure and details to create that opportunity for myself.
This is so good, because I literally at a business meeting yesterday said those words. I'm not a business person, but they asked me, what do you want? What would make you happy? And I said exactly what you just said, to work as a team and be transparent, authentic, and that when we have conflict, here's what we would do. So it's all mapped out. There's not going to be any of that crazy, surprising ego projection. That to me is happiness.
What's beautiful about this, Tasha, is when I do sessions with people, a lot of what we talk about is confirmation and validation of what they already know.
Yeah.
So it gives them this confidence that, wow, I'm actually on my journey. I'm actually already partway there.
Right.
And I say, this is a refinement. It's not a makeover. But it so happens, again, synchronicity runs this. And you've just done this wonderful segue without knowing it from your personal chart into the global picture.
Good.
So congratulations, you're there. And the reason I want to talk about this is the 59-55 combination. Because the 59th gene key and the 55 are programming partners. So in the process, every gene key has a programming partner, which means they work together against you in the shadow and they work together for you in the gift. So the shadow of the 55 is victimhood and the shadow of the 59 is dishonesty. So it means that you come into this balance, this shadow balance of becoming the victim of the dishonesty in the shadow. So last year, in the fall of last year, Richard came out and he said that the 59th gene key was the only gene key calling him at that time. And he is the gene key, so you pay attention. And then he said he had to start this transmission 3 times because it had already changed by the time he'd finished the transmission. So I then got very excited because I knew astrologically we were stepping into the age of Aquarius on the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction on the winter solstice last year. A lot of people were wanting to see that in the sky, which many people did, that Saturn-Jupiter that close to each other in the night sky, but it was at 0 degrees Aquarius. So this was seen to be a stepping point into the age of Aquarius, which it was. And the 55th gene key is the gene key of the age of Aquarius. And so when Richard said the 59 was transmuting that fast, I got excited because that meant we could actually step into the 55 on the age of Aquarius because we were transmuting the dishonesty. So now then we've started that entry into the 55th gene key, which is about stepping into absolute total freedom. So now in the bigger picture, let's look back at what's happened over the last 16 to 18 months. So we go back to January 2020, when there was another Saturn conjunction with Pluto. And what was happening then was the astrologers were saying, this is the beginning of the end of the old patriarchal structures. This was before COVID and the pandemic and all that stuff. So then what happened, that happened in the 61st gene key, the shadow of which is psychosis. So what's happened since then over this period of time is we have been sold all of this information, most of which is not true. It's created this psychosis and fear for people because they don't know what to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And what we've been supposed to be doing in this time is stepping into our own inner truth. What do I believe to be true? What's in my integrity with all of this information coming in? And not allowing ourselves to get pulled down by it. So all of this unraveling taking place is leading us into this new age of Aquarius. And so one of the most important things for the listeners to know is this is all going to resolve itself in a most beautiful way. So people don't need to get concerned and fearful about what's happening, because we are in this. The 59 and the 55 are demonstrating clearly that all of the stuff that's been hidden is now being revealed. And it's been revealed to be healed and set free,
Right.
so we can step into this new energy.
It felt very much like a rock being turned over. And I felt such
Absolutely.
joy when pandemic first hit. I was embarrassed that I felt so joyful.
Yeah.
But that feeling of, oh, now there's air, now it can be healed, was
Exactly.
tremendous.
Yeah. And there's still more to come out. And again, it's important for us just to witness it from a neutral perspective and say, this has to happen. It's good that it's happening. It's not fun. It's not very nice to hear or see, but it must come out before we can go fully into this new age. But on top of all of that, what's really important for people to understand is we're getting tremendous help from on high and from underneath. So the cosmos is beaming down this incredibly powerful frequency of light into us from above, and Mother Earth herself is stepping up, which includes what is called the Schumann resonance, which is inside the 15th gene key. The 15th gene key is the gene key of the summer solstice, which is coming up next weekend. So the summer solstice is when we reach our highest pinnacle. It's when the sun reaches its highest point in the sky. It's when we are in our highest expression. And the Schumann resonance is the natural heartbeat of Mother Earth, where she is vibrating at a particular frequency. And over the last couple of years, it's been going up and down, peaking up and coming down, peaking up and going down. And I don't know if you know this, but in the last 68 hours, all the instruments have gone blank. They can't measure the Schumann resonance.
Huh.
And I don't know if they've broken down or if it's been hidden. I don't know what it is, but there are no measurements.
Where are these instruments? Just clue me in a little bit here.
Sorry?
I'm not sure I know what you mean. Where are these instruments? What are we talking about?
So the Schumann resonance is a measurable frequency.
And who's measuring
and its base rate is 7.8 hertz.
Uh-huh.
So it's a low hum. So these instruments are just set up to measure this frequency.
Yeah. Where are they? Who's got these instruments?
They're all over the world. They're set up all over the world.
And they've all stopped?
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Well, because there aren't any readings.
And where would one go to see these readings?
Well, you can go to different YouTube. I don't have any direct information, available in my head, but I've just been sent information about it.
Uh-huh.
But there's just been no measurements made for 68 hours.
Wow. Well, that's pretty fascinating.
Things are happening.
Uh-huh.
So the other thing to know right now is we're in Mercury retrograde. We had the solar eclipse last week. So you're getting this incredible pressure, this intense pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And people who are sensitive can feel this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's, for some people, it's tending to push them up and out of their bodies. And it's really important to stay present and grounded and spend time with Mother Earth. But the point I want to make, though, is that we are having this energy coming down from above to raise our frequency and coming up from below. So we're literally being pressured. It's like the coal being turned into diamonds. That's what's happening to us internally. And this is about becoming more crystalline in nature.
And this, you're talking about co-creativity here for me. When
Absolutely.
I listen to what you're saying, it warms my heart, because I understand creativity. I'm a creative person, but nothing feels as exciting as co-creativity.
That's right.
Which is letting these forces, this alchemy, it's really an alchemy that occurs when you open to it.
That's
and
right.
allow it to express through you. So you're not alone. You're not on a solo journey that way.
Exactly.
Can you offer our listeners some guidance, perhaps, to be able to welcome these energies of co-creativity? What's an attitude or a stance or a practice that could help specifically?
Yeah. So the most important thing is to not get frightened, and is to hold to your own inner knowing that you are a true divine being and that you're here on the planet now for a purpose. You have somehow created this miracle that you've arrived right on time in the right place. Somehow you've navigated yourself through many lifetimes to be here at this time. So that is to be fully honored. And then it is to get fully grounded in your body by spending time with Mother Earth out in nature, and spending as long as it takes to really feel connected with her. And people are having extraordinary experiences. And one of those experiences is through light phenomenon. Rainbows, colors, shimmerings of plants. It's just really connecting deeply into what you observe and not discounting it. That one of the big issues is around rainbows. And I was driving home just 2 nights ago, and this vertical rainbow in the sky behind me, it wasn't a rainbow, it was like a spectrum of the rainbow frequencies in a vertical column. You can't explain that away, and you shouldn't, but you just want to be in awe and wonder of it. And then you pay really close attention to the synchronicities that show up, the people that show up you weren't expecting to show up, or the words or the things, the labels, the things you see. You think, how did that just happen? And it's really important. The more you honor that, the more they happen. And then it's doing this inner work. So whenever you get triggered by anything, if you get the opportunity to step back and not engage in the trigger and just try to relax and step back and perhaps go off on your own and just sit quietly and really go into what was that feeling that came up in me? What was that? What was behind? When I've had that feeling before, and it always goes back to our childhood, and that's what this process is about. It's going back to when this first occurred in my life, the first distortion from my naivety, my innocence, and that's what we're doing. We're unraveling back.
And that, for me, the really quick, easy way to not only identify the feeling and take it back, but understand the meaning that I made up back then that's incorrect.
That's right.
And as soon as you land in it and share that with another human being, you're no longer projecting on them, and you're owning your experience, and you don't have to be disqualified for it. You know it's not correct. It's not about being correct. It's just what is happening. And if the other person does that as well, that's my idea of joyful communication. I don't need you to be absent of your triggering and your wounding and your shadow. But when you don't know and you think I'm doing it to you, I find that painful. Like, it's just not fun. We're not helping each other expand. It becomes like an acting out of a drama or something. And I find it very hard to hold that on one's own. Does that make sense?
Well, that's because you're aligned to. Clearly, what you've just described is you're aligned to person, that you do your best sorting things out by bouncing stuff off one other person. So somewhere in your profile, you're going to have a line 2. It could be in your attraction sphere. It could be in your radiance or purpose. But it means that you personally do your best unraveling of yourself by bouncing off one other person, which is the second line.
Well, what would you do when you're projected on? So it's one thing to say, you know how to handle your reactivity, but now someone's reacting all over you. What do you do in that moment, or what's helpful for you personally?
Well, what Richard Rudd would say, without any shadow of a doubt, is return non-love with love. So what you try to do is to hold the space of love, because when someone's projecting onto you, they're projecting their shadow, which is their wound, which is their deepest fear. So you're wanting to hold them in the container that you can, as long as it's safe, obviously, to try to reduce the emotional charge that the person is carrying by just being in this magnanimous state yourself.
But surely you have an experience where someone's emotional charge activates your emotional charge, because what they're perceiving is your wound. Like what they're projecting onto you activates your own wound.
So,
right?
Tasha, I can tell you honestly, for a very long time, that's never happened to me.
Good.
It's been a long time since I've actually had that reaction. And it's usually the people closest to you that cause that reaction. So for me, it might be a mild frustration that someone isn't getting it because of that 12th gene key, the elitism. That might be one of those triggers for me. But because I've been doing this so intensely for 7 years now, I can usually check within myself. And remember when I was the school principal, I would have incredibly irate parents on the phone.
Right.
And I would learn over time to really listen deeply to what they were really saying rather than what they were fighting about. I'll give you an example. A student who did not do their homework and got a 0 on this assignment, and the parents are going ballistic about this teacher, and then I later find out their daughter didn't go home that night. And because it's a private school, they don't like to show their shadow frequencies, right?
Right.
So they act out, but not about what they're really acting out about. And so when you're doing this work, what you're wanting to do is to stay in the present moment. Don't let yourself get jettisoned out. Stay in the present moment and stay with them and listen deeply to what they're actually meaning beyond the words they're saying. It takes courage and it takes confidence. But that's the final step in all of this, is to be there.
Mm-hmm. And the ability to contain, not repress, but contain yourself, because no matter what you're experiencing, you don't need to swallow it. You just need to not let it lead you and lead your perception.
Containing is a great word because you're containing yourself, but you're also containing them. You're bringing them into a chalice of love, right?
Yeah.
And their behavior will typically change.
Yeah. So I know we only have a few more minutes, and I really want to get to this exciting event you've got coming up. You're coming to town, coming to Vancouver, and there's so many questions that I still haven't asked, so maybe I'll ask them when I meet you. Hopefully I'll meet you. Tell us what's coming up in July here in Vancouver.
Yeah, so on that weekend of July 9, 10, 11, I'm coming over to Maple Ridge, actually, and on the Friday evening, I'm going to be doing a free introductory talk just to give people a general understanding of the gene keys, about me and about Richard Rudd, and just give the background that we talked about in the first few minutes today. And then on the Saturday, there's going to be a full 6-hour workshop where I will go in detail through the 11 spheres, through the activation sequence, Venus sequence and Pearl sequence, talking about the lines, the 6 lines in all of those spheres, and giving some examples of some of the gene keys. Obviously, I can't cover all the gene keys for all the people, but I will be doing what I will probably do is get a profile for that day to see which gene keys are prominent for that particular day. And there are always some gene keys that are important to speak about because there are some that are really significant and important. And then on the Sunday, I'll be making myself available to do private one-on-one sessions with people, so that they can have their 1 hour one-on-one time with me to go over the details of their own profile. And in 1 hour, because I've been doing this now for some time, I can cover every aspect of their profile and the path with them in that 1 hour, and then send them away to do their work. Because one of the most important things in all of this work is you have to do it yourself. No one can do it for you. And I have to be very clear on that boundary, that I'm giving you some insights and opportunities to discover for yourself. And it's your own personal Grail Quest is exactly what it is. The beautiful thing about it is, though, Tasha, it's totally safe. This is one of the most grounded, solid aspects of spiritual work I've come across. There's nothing woo-woo about it. It's very woo-woo, but it's grounded woo-woo. It's not out there in space. And that's what I love about it, because one of my strengths always has been to create a safe container for people to work in. Very important.
Love it. So here's a couple, and all this information, of course, will be online on consciouslivingradio.org, and all the links are on this Facebook broadcast right now. A couple more questions, sort of random ones, but I went, what do you mean by that? You talked about we're designed to prosper in different ways. And that struck me as, gee, what are these various ways that people are designed to prosper? Like, are we talking money here? We're talking about how you actually, how abundant you are in the world. There are different ways. Tell us.
Yeah. So this is what you're talking about, is the actual pearl, which is the final step.
Okay.
And this is where you find your complete, total contentment in life. So your prosperity and abundance depends upon what is most important to you. And it can include money, but it's not just money. It's health, it's well-being, it's relationship. It's what you would really want for yourself, in, if you like, in your ideal world. And that may not be what you think it is until you get there. So it's different for different people, because obviously different people have different focuses in their lives on what they really want for themselves. And so this is your own unique journey, which leads you to your own unique contentment at the end of your life. Not at the end of your life, at the end of the journey that we're now on to come to that place.
And you mentioned health. So the gene keys also look at health, people who are struggling with physical issues.
Absolutely,
These
yes.
keys will illuminate.
So I work with people all the way through, from people with terminal illness, with serious cancer, right through to people who are going through enlightenment. So when you can help people understand the deepest wounding that they're still holding on to, then you can definitely help to heal those wounds and heal. I also engage with doing healing work, energetic healing work, as well as the gene keys. But I always work with the profile, because the profile is them. The profile is their own hologenetic self. So when I work with someone on their own, I always bring their profile in to be part of the journey.
And you know what I didn't ask, and I realize I don't know, because I've known the I Ching for so long and used it in some important situations in my life, but I've never asked where it came from. I mean, I know China, but what's the origin of the
again,
I Ching?
it was a similar sort of situation where you've got a person in complete deep reflection and just the download of information coming in.
Yeah. Okay, a couple of minutes left. What do you want our listeners to know that I haven't asked you, we haven't touched on? What's important that you want to share?
The most important thing is that we are going through this transformation on this planet, which has never happened before with people alive on the planet. So we are absorbing frequencies that we've never experienced before. And so please have the confidence that you have the ability to navigate your way through what is coming. It's going to be magnificent, but it's going to be a challenge, because you're going to be pushed to the limit of how much light you can absorb. So look after yourself, get fully grounded, eat well, and make sure that you're staying in this really balanced place, and look into your deep, dark stuff. When you go into it, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. And the gene keys really, really helps you to do that in a really calm and responsible, reasonable way. But this is all going to come to a wonderful outcome. So I just invite the listeners to trust and believe that Mother Earth is in charge here.
I love it. And from your heart to the world right now, they're all listening. What's your wish?
My wish for what? My wish for the world? For humanity?
For everyone listening, just right now in
For
this
everybody
moment, everyone's listening.
for everyone to step into their highest perspective and to live a life of joy and peace and harmony and love, and support one another and support the animal kingdom, the plant kingdom, the birds, everything. Just to be in love with life, the Garden of Eden, Shambhala.
It's here. Right?
And it's waiting for us to manifest it.
Thank you, Peter. It's just been such a pleasure having you on the show. And thank you.
My absolute pleasure. Thank you.
We've been speaking with Peter Tung. And again, all the information about the upcoming event, it will be online on consciouslivingradio.org and on the YouTube channel and on this Facebook post. And also, you didn't give your, or not email, your website, please.
Well, it's simply my name, www.petertung.com.
Okay.
TONGUE, just like in the mouth.
Yeah.
And if people want to go to the Gene Keys website to get their profile, it's just genekeys.com. And that's GENE, genekeys.com.
Beautiful. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
I'm Tasha Sims. Thank you.
And I'm Marc Braun.